At a family dinner, my grandparents made a secret $15 million request that changed everything. I never thought a Tuesday night dinner could fracture a family so cleanly that there'd be no way to glue it back together. My name is Evelyn Carter, and until that night I was the quiet one. The granddaughter who showed up early, helped set the table, listened more than she spoke, and left without making waves. In a family like mine, silence was survival. My grandparents' house sat on a hill in Connecticut, old money quiet, white shutters, long gravel driveway. The kind of place where nothing looked flashy, but everything was expensive. Generations expensive. That night the whole family was there. My parents, my Uncle Richard and his wife, my cousin Blake, who never stopped talking about his startup, my Aunt Linda, who measured people by what they wore and what they earned, and me, seated near the end of the table, nursing a glass of water. My grandparents, Harold and Margaret Whitmore, sat at the head. They were in their late 70s, sharp-eyed, composed, and very aware of every word spoken under their roof. Dinner was polite on the surface, roast chicken, wine, small talk, but underneath, tension simmered like a pot about to boil over. I felt it before it happened. After dessert, when plates were cleared and coffee was poured, my grandmother reached across the table and lightly tapped her spoon against her cup. "Evelyn," she said gently, "would you walk with us to the study?" The table went silent. My mother looked confused. My uncle frowned. Blake smirked like this was some kind of joke. "Of course," I said, standing. My grandfather rose slowly, leaning on his cane. Together, the three of us left the dining room and closed the heavy oak door behind us. Inside the study, the air smelled like leather and old books. My grandfather gestured for me to sit. Margaret didn't waste time. "We've made a decision," she said, "and we don't want the rest of the family to hear it yet." My heart pounded. "Okay." Harold folded his hands. "Our estate is worth approximately $15 million. I nodded. Everyone knew that. "We want you," Margaret continued, eyes steady on mine, "to take control of it, all of it." I laughed nervously. "I think you mean the family trust." "No," Harold interrupted. "We mean you." My mouth went dry. "You'll be named executor, primary beneficiary. The assets will be transferred into a new holding structure under your authority." I stared at them. "Why me?" Margaret's voice softened. "Because you're the only one who hasn't tried to take something from us." Silence settled heavy. Harold leaned forward. "Your parents believe entitlement is inheritance. Richard believes intimidation is inheritance. Blake believes noise is inheritance." He paused. "You believe responsibility is." My hands trembled. "They'll hate me." Margaret smiled sadly. "They already do. They just hide it better." I swallowed. "If I say no." Harold nodded. "Then the family tears itself apart anyway. This way, at least there's order." I took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'll do it," I said. That was the moment everything changed. The documents were signed 2 weeks later. No announcement, no celebration, just lawyers, sealed envelopes, and instructions. Then came the dinner invitation. This time, it was framed as a family update. Everyone showed up smiling. My grandparents sat calmly as the attorney cleared his throat. When he read my name, the room froze. Blake laughed. "Good one." Then the lawyer kept reading. "Executor, beneficiary, authority." My mother stood up. "This has to be a mistake." My uncle's face turned red. "She manipulated you." Margaret raised her hand. "Sit down." No one had heard that tone from her before. "This decision is final," she said. "Any attempt to challenge it will result in immediate removal from what remains." The room erupted. Accusations flew. Greed, betrayal, ungrateful child. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The real revenge didn't begin that night. It began quietly. First, I audited everything. Shell companies, loans to Blake's startup that were never repaid, Properties Richard used rent-free. Credit cards my parents ran up in the trust's name. I didn't confront them. I documented. Then I acted. Funding was withdrawn. Properties were reclaimed. Accounts were frozen pending review. The screams came next. My phone exploded with calls and messages. How could you do this to family? You're destroying us. I answered none of them. Instead, I invited them, one by one, to meetings with the attorneys. Professional, calm, unemotional. Blake lost his company within 3 months. Richard had to sell the lake house. My parents downsized. They called me cold. They called me heartless. But they never called me wrong. The final blow came 6 months later. At another family dinner. This time, I was the one at the head of the table. Margaret squeezed my hand. Harold nodded with pride. I stood. I want to be clear, I said. This isn't revenge. They stared. This is consequence. I slid copies of documents across the table. Proof, receipts, timelines. You taught me family mattered, I continued. You just forgot that integrity mattered more. No one spoke. I smiled politely. Dinner's ready. That night, as I walked out under the stars, I realized something powerful. They thought money made them untouchable. They were wrong. Trust did. And they gave it to the wrong girl to underestimate. I thought taking control of the money would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The hardest part was watching how fast blood turned into enemies once they realized the fortune was truly gone from their reach. 3 weeks after the accounts were frozen, the first lawsuit arrived. It came from my Uncle Richard. Undue influence, the paperwork said. Manipulation of elderly parties. I read it at my kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the documents like they were ordinary mail. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I called the attorney. File our response, I said calmly, and schedule depositions. By the end of that call, the war had officially begun. They stopped pretending after that. My parents showed up unannounced at my apartment, my mother crying loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. You're ruining this family, she sobbed. Your grandparents won't live forever. What happens when they're gone and you're alone? I met her eyes. Then I'll still be honest, I said. Can you say the same? She slapped me. I didn't move. She left shaking. That was the last time she ever raised a hand to me. The depositions were brutal. Richard tried to paint himself as a devoted son. The problem was evidence. Bank transfers, emails, recorded calls, years of entitlement documented line by line. Blake did worse. Under oath, he admitted he assumed the money would eventually be his anyway. That sentence alone ended his case. The judge didn't even hide his irritation. By month 4, their legal fees were bleeding them dry. By month 5, they started turning on each other. But the final betrayal didn't come from them. It came from Linda. My aunt, always quiet, always watching. She approached me after one hearing, eyes soft, voice gentle. I understand now, she said. You were protecting them. I wanted to believe her. I really did. 2 days later, she leaked a falsified story to a financial blog, claimed I'd already sold assets, claimed I was funneling money overseas. The story went viral. For 48 hours, my name was dragged through headlines. I didn't respond. Instead, I let my lawyers do something far more devastating. They released the real numbers. Public records, clean audits, transparency so complete it left no room for doubt. Then they released Linda's emails. She disappeared from public life overnight. My grandparents watched everything quietly. One evening, Margaret called me into the study again. You didn't have to protect us like this, she said. Yes, I did, I replied. Harold smiled faintly. Then we chose correctly. 2 weeks later, they amended the trust one final time. A clause I didn't expect. Any family member who continued legal action would be permanently disinherited from everything, including personal heirlooms, letters, and properties not previously disclosed. That clause ended the lawsuits instantly. Funny how courage vanishes when consequences become permanent. The last dinner happened 1 year later. Same house, same table. Different energy. Only a few people showed up. No shouting, no entitlement, just silence and regret. Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. My parents looked older, smaller. Blake didn't come at all. I served the food myself. At the end of the meal, my grandfather raised his glass. "To Evelyn," he said, "who proved that strength doesn't need permission." No one objected. They couldn't. After my grandparents passed peacefully 2 years later, I followed their wishes exactly. Scholarships were funded, charities supported, the house preserved. The family received letters instead of checks. Some apologized. Most didn't. It didn't matter. I had already won something more valuable than money. Freedom. Today, people still ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd chosen peace over control. I tell them the truth. Peace without respect is just silence. And silence is what nearly destroyed me once. I didn't break the family. I exposed it. And when the dust settled, I stood exactly where they never thought I would. At the head of the table. Unapologetic. Unbreakable. And